Does The Monkey live up to the Stephen King short story, or is it just another in a long line of shoddy Stephen King adaptations? Let's find out in today's episode of Black Cat Archives. Hi, I'm Heather, and this is Black Cat Archives, my channel where I review all things horror, mystery, thriller, suspense, and more. So if that sounds like something that might be of interest to you, then stick around and let's get started. So today I'm going to be talking about The Monkey, the latest from Osgood Perkins and the adaptation of the Stephen King short story by the same name. So I have here my copy of Skeleton Crew by Stephen King, and this is where The Monkey was published in 1985. I love Stephen King's work. I remember becoming enamored with him in middle school, and I soon, very disappointedly, learned that Stephen King adaptations seldom ever capture the essence of Stephen King's stories or novels. So I want to go into this in a different video. So this one is just a spoiler-free review of The Monkey. It's generally speaking, most Stephen King adaptations are not great. Like a novel that will be absolutely terrifying to read, or a short story that just really gets under your skin and is insanely scary. Oftentimes in the film adaptation will either come across as very campy or cheesy, or it just doesn't capture the gestalt of the original book. So when I saw that Osgood Perkins was going to be directing a Stephen King adaptation by way of The Monkey, I was super excited, because if you've seen my Top 10 Horror of 2024 video, you know Longlegs was in my #1 slot for most of the year and then became #2. With this film, he takes a bit of a departure from his usual slow burn, atmospheric, frankly, pretty terrifying movies, and he leans more into his comedic side. So he definitely has a firm grasp on dark comedy, and it really shines through with The Monkey. So admittedly, when I saw the trailers for The Monkey and I saw Osgood Perkins, based on what I've seen last year with Longlegs, I thought this one was going to be super scary. And especially because the short story, The Monkey, it has that sort of Stephen King thing where he takes something that doesn't seem on its surface that terrifying or kind of silly, and then he gets under your skin with it, and you really get this insight into the protagonist's mind in such a way that you're freaking scared of whatever it is that they're dealing with, or whatever it is they're obsessing over, or in this case, the monkey toy, right? So in the short story, it follows the same protagonist as it does in the film, which is this man whose father brought back a mysterious toy from his job going around in the merchant mariners. Basically, the monkey can predict when someone is going to die. Yeah, I mean, that sounds really silly, right? This little monkey, the little organ grinder, cymbal crashing, clashing monkey being this harbinger of death is obviously very silly on its surface. But again, with a short story, you're getting that inner peek into how the character feels like their life is being torn apart by whatever this thing is, in this case, the monkey toy. And it makes you feel something, I say all this to say, when I first saw the promotional material for The Monkey, the trailer and everything, I thought it was going to be scary. I thought this was going to be a scary Stephen King adaptation. And what I found when I saw the movie the other day is Osgood Perkins is really leaning into his dark comedy side here. So we get this hilariously over-the-top, pretty gnarly, gory moments, when the monkey exacts its terror upon people. And almost in a Final Destination style way, where the ways these people die are just kind of absurd situations. It leans more into the camp for sure, but it still maintains the smart dark comedy, if that makes sense. Now, The film takes a lot of departures from the short story in terms of how the monkey works, even down to like how the monkey looks. Like in the story, he has like the single symbols that he crashes together. And Stephen King uses that onomatopoeia, like jang, jang, jang. So you can really imagine the cymbals crashing, whereas in this one, the monkey has a drumstick and a little drum that it beats. So it's different in that way. But then it's also different. Like I don't want to go into too much detail because this is the spoiler-free take, but there are definitely some departures from the short story, especially in terms of how it's resolved. It's not 100% following the Stephen King short story, which is pretty common. But I think what it does really well is it finds a way to take the gestalt of the story, which is really about grief and family and like father-son relationships. I think what Osgood Perkins does really well is using that dark comedy to explore grief in a very visceral way. I think that that is one of its really strong assets. I think also the performances were great. Their mother, Tatiana Maslany, I'll put the title below in case I butchered her name, but she was great. Osgood Perkins has a cameo as someone, I won't reveal who, but he's very funny. So it's very funny. It has very funny moments. Now, again, I was a little bit disappointed because I wanted it to be a scary movie. If you watched my last video on Hard Eyes, I said in that, because that one's like a horror comedy, I was like, oh, I'm looking forward to some actually scary movies like The Monkey that's about to come out. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. You know, like it was good. I enjoyed it. I thought it was very well done. Like I said, the dark comedy like really bites. I think it's interesting because Osgood Perkins just continues to show like all these kind of different facets to his abilities as a storyteller and as a director, because like I went back and was looking at The Blackcoat's Daughter, which I believe was like his feature debut. And tonally, it's so different from Longlegs or The Monkey. Like, it's funny because, like, in a way, despite the disparities in tone across these movies, there's something about the way that people act in Osgood Perkins movies. In this film, the actors are all acting like differently than you might expect people to act in real life. But again, it's almost like, it reminds me almost in a way of like Harold and Maude in terms of its like dark comedy exploring grief sort of a thing. Now it's much more gruesome and grisly than Harold and Maude, but it has a similar concept, right? Like exploring these crazy deaths and grief using dark comedy, which I think is really great. I thought cinematography wise that it was very well shot, especially in terms of how they shot the monkey, because even despite the dark comedy nature of the film, the monkey itself was always terrifying when it was on screen. Like the way it was shot definitely captured the like terror and dread of the monkey itself. I can't really say like, oh, if you're a fan of Longlegs, then you'll like The Monkey, because they're just totally different in terms of tone and scary, like genre even, you know, like, because like I said, this one is much more of like a dark comedy to me than it is just like a straight up horror movie. Of course, it has horror elements, but it feels more in line with dark comedy to me. So yeah, again, I was going into it hoping for something a little scarier, but I was not disappointed at all. It knew what it was trying to do. It was very well written, very funny. I'd say if you're a fan of the Stephen King short story, don't go into it expecting to see an exact match to the story, because there are some liberties taken and the film goes in a little bit of different direction than the short story. But I will say that it captures the essence of the story very well. You could make an argument that this is kind of how you have to successfully adapt Stephen King short stories or novels into movies. Like what's on the page may not necessarily translate to the screen. So you kind of have to go about the tone or however in a different or unique kind of spin in order to bring the story into like a cinematic light, I guess. So yeah, I'd say where it's very much a departure from his previous films, like The Black Coat's Daughter and The Pretty Thing That Lives in the House were both extremely like slow burn, suspenseful sort of films. And then Long Legs was more in line with that, like this atmospheric dread and suspense, but it was also a departure from those two. But then with The Monkey, it's like a full-on departure into dark comedy. And I will say there are some parts of it where like I was like kind of like what is this weird world? But then I think it's just trying to make these comments on destiny and death and the suddenness of it, the nonsensical nature of death, and like I said, grief and family dynamics and how grief can completely destroy a family or a person, or how it can maybe change people for the better. Depending on your reaction to the grief, you can maybe see something in a different light or interpret it in a way that makes you appreciate life more. And so I think that that is what he's trying to go for with The Monkey. And I think for the most part, it works. Like I said, there were a couple moments that I was a little like about, but overall, I think it was really well done. It was super enjoyable to see in the theater with all of the crazy, crazy, gruesome kills. If you're not into gore, don't see it. There's a lot of super gnarly stuff going on there. But yeah, I thought it was a fun one. I'm interested to see like what else Osgood Perkins has up his sleeve, you know? So yeah. So hopefully you get a chance to check out The Monkey soon. And I'll see you next time here at the Black Cat Archives. Thanks so much for watching. And leave me a comment below to let me know what you think about The Monkey, or if you have thoughts about Stephen King adaptations in general or anything else. Leave me a comment below. Let's keep the discussion going. So that's all for now, and we'll see you next time here at the Black Cat Archives. All right, that's it. Goodbye.